So a couple of points that I kind of noticed in the rules after getting where I got. One is, and I forgot about this, you can't place a number of food tokens that creates a tie. After placing your tokens, no species may have the same amount of tokens from 2 or more different colors. Now this is a little weird, because the way that's worded is problematic. Because you can also play any number of action cards, and some of the action cards could actually generate a tie. So I think it's still conceivable that a tie can happen, and that the rules just don't account for that as written. But if this is a rule, as opposed to some sort of explanation attempt that fails, and I'm going to assume the latter, well, no, actually the rule is just as bad. After placing your tokens, no species may have the same amount of tokens from 2 or more different colors. There's no way that you can guarantee that unless you're not allowed to use your cards to create a tie. I'm going to assume that that's just kind of a rough case here, and that that's not what they mean, because essentially the game would stop and you would not be able to play if a tie was already in existence due to the play of one of these type of cards. Because there's no prohibition on the card, I think, to do that. Let's see. Maybe there is. Maybe I'm just missing that. Now, in general, you don't want to play for a tie, so we didn't really have to worry about that. Yeah, oh yeah, after that action, the species may not have the same amount of tokens from 2 or more different parties. Okay, so yeah, the rules are solid as they stand. You cannot generate a tie there, and in which case you don't need a rule for handling ties. Very well. The other thing that's kind of wasn't clear to me just from reading, but now that I look kind of at the sequence of play, the parliamentary election campaign happens each round. So regardless of whether or not a single, in this particular case, we've got a parliamentary election in the very next round. So things are going to play kind of as I assumed them to be. We're just going to be throwing bids in. But on the first, under sort of normal conditions, this would have been a 1, 2, 3 out here, which means on the second, on the second turn, what we'd be seeing is, and the third for that matter, is people pooling pieces up over the course of multiple of these campaigns. And therefore, those pieces that were, those cards that were event-based actually do make sense. So I may start playing them as they're indicated, which is, yeah, you're not going to be scoring them right away, but you can build up towards something and get your extra food that way. But we'll leave things as they are for now. And not to feel too terribly bad about those cards that I misplayed, like this one that gives a couple of grain. It's just a couple of grain. It's a couple of grain I'd be getting probably this turn. Well, I mean, it might influence my play. But there's a, everybody's awash in food right now. Okay. So there's not going to be a presidential election this time, which means we go to the parliamentary election campaign, which would happen no matter what, but we do have a parliamentary election this turn again. And for this, remember this is done in order. We do have to look everything up because things are a little weird, but it's done in order, in player order, and that'll mean gold is the first player to go. And they can spend up to 5 of these. This is the Prime Minister, not the President, right? I'm trying to find, here's the President here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now it's time to make some decisions. And I don't have a lot of cards here, in part because some of them were played. This one gives an additional parliamentary vote for controlling the birdies. That makes the birdies appealing, and unfortunately I have to play first. So 3 seemed to be a good bid last time, and 2 will probably get me these 3, is just what I'm guessing, you know, but I could be completely wrong. We're going to make these kind of decisions again across the board. Orange will be the next player, etc., but I don't want to do this all on video. Now, remember the injunction against ever getting to the same number of pieces as someone else. Red has played out their pieces. Hey, look, they're the last player. I've still got 2 to go, but look, nobody tried to take my hippos away. Nobody even went for second place in them, and I just got them. That's really kind of the fault. Blue should have probably been sleazing into them, because 1 piece could have gotten them into that guaranteed, and then they'd have 3, which they wouldn't put in snakes. They'd put somewhere else. But 3 could have gotten them. Well, I got them the lead here, but I could have gotten them a lead somewhere else, like here in Zebra. Red was going to play up in Zebra. They have a card that allows them to exchange 1 Zebra. This is probably the time to play that. But if it had just, like, allowed them to add, they couldn't add with that card, and they couldn't place with that card, which is kind of interesting. They're going to be able to get a fair amount of bids, though. I think the most they can get, they could take this outright. Nobody's got it, for 1. They can put here, and then they play the Zebra card, and they're going to have a lot of votes to turn a black piece into a red piece. And I'll come back and count the votes. But oh, I also had the hippos one, but I don't need to do that. Yeah, neat. It has given us a net of 19 red votes, with a majority being only 23. So I can kind of work with anyone I like and have, well, no, green wouldn't do it, and orange wouldn't do it unless I worked with both of them. But I could work with any of the other players and get myself into a majority. Here's a slight problem. I don't want to work with one of these 2 necessarily, because they're already in the lead. It might behoove me to work with people who already have a lot of cards. They don't end up stockpiling too many cards, because if you're in the minority for a long period of time, you might end up in a position where you have so many cards that you can kind of swoop in and do a lot of damage at the end of the game when things are more important. But it's hard to tell, you know. There are definitely advantages to being part of the government and getting some of the card options. I haven't informed the government yet, but I did pass out the money and pulled all the counters off. And you can see there's less counters kicking around. Red's managed to keep a couple. That doesn't seem right. Jesus. I'm looking for the loyalty cards that would have kept those. I think I just didn't remove Red's pieces. Yeah. Okay. Winning a parliamentary election gives you piles and piles of money. That puts you in a better position for the next election. So it's one of the few, it's an anti catch-up mechanism, basically, which I like the factor of. usually feel like catch-up mechanisms are a little cheesy in a lot of ways. But what it does mean is that if you get behind, you can be in serious trouble. He's got $4 for the next 3 turns until the parliamentary election. He may be out of the game if he can't figure out something to do that's going to help him here, which could be seriously problematic. And therefore he may have to use some cards he didn't really want to use at this point in order to get himself a catch-up. One thing I'm noticing, or to get himself back in a little bit into the elections. One thing that I find kind of annoying about this is all this fiddling with the money, passing it back and forth, putting it on the board, etc. That's the mechanism of the game. But what it kind of feels like is not too different from a lot of other political games that have a lot more going on, but I'm mechanically doing a lot more in this, counting out all this money, etc. I'm not sure. You know, maybe it would be easier with cubes to pull things out or whatever, but I'm just not sure that that I'm getting all that much gameplay decisions. You know, that kind of is sort of the sweet spot for Euros or whatever. Lots and lots of decisions for the amount of mechanical actions that I'm taking. If it's bothering me, it probably will bother other players. Players for whom this game is more designed, even more. Red and blue were kind of the outsiders last time. They felt particularly left behind, and they're both kind of in good position this time. They formed a government because of Red's power. They got 2 of these, but blue did manage to say, hey, let me have, you know, the 2 offices other than the prime minister, because prime minister is the important one. Okay. In addition to being promised some points, which I'd like to get, but I might not. That meant a lot of cards got played for, or got drawn for everyone else. And now we have the magical event. And as soon as that's done, then we get the political goals. The event is, I think she gives 2 grain. I'm not sure. It's not here. It's what it looks like. We look for events. For each indicated political office, they take the indicated food. Since he has the office, he gets a couple more food. We get to trigger our point, which we throw out there. And we're at the end of the round. That went rather quickly. There will be a presidential election this time around. I know why it went quickly, because I skimmed through all these different things without looking at everybody's cards and thinking, did they want to do anything? So after parliamentary elections, we had events. We could do a swap. That doesn't really help us at this point, I don't think. Presidential election already happening. I know he wants to play to grab a victory point here because he may never get this job again. It's still early in the game, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a terribly long game, so I think I do want to fire that off. I don't have snakes anymore. Whatever I put in there got thrown away, so I'm not going to get anything. Do I want 2 extra votes to take from someone? Well, it might help with a no confidence, but not with blue and red working together. They're too potent. So again, I'll hold on to that. Oh, we have the opposition over here. And I just skimmed through these. I clearly do not have the elephants. That's only black pieces in there for some reason. And I'm trying to see. It's really kind of hard to process everything that's going on with all the cards. One difficulty with doing it solo. So what I was going to do was blue was going to get themselves a victory card as well by getting that office. And that puts us there. And then I think we're in the presidential elections. And I don't think that I skipped somebody's card that they wanted to play, but that's the most likely error that I'm going to make playing solo. And quite honestly, if I was playing it opposed, I would probably forget as well, because the tendency is going to be to swing through these things rather quickly, and it's going to be very easy to not be able to assimilate the information on these cards quickly. Probably even once you're kind of used to the game, it's going to be tough, at least for someone like me, to with all that color and everything, and then there's this tiny little icon up here which tells you when it can be done, and something here that's not really understandable the way words are, that forces you to flip to a picture. Yeah, I tend to stay away from games that rely too heavily on iconography. I would, you know, and I understand the need for it in a multilingual game. You know, it made Race for the Galaxy or whatever unplayable for me. It makes a lot of games very, very difficult. I don't mind if there's a certain amount of it, but all the game information on those cards is basically pictures instead of words, and that means it's about as useful as a foreign language card would be. You know, at least if this was written in German or something, I know a little bit of German, I know a little bit of French, I know a little bit of Spanish. If it ends up being an Asian language, I probably am screwed. But you know, being able to read those images is actually more difficult for me than being able to get some idea of what the card probably means from one of the more popular Western European languages. Okay, so we're at the next turn, which is going to kick off with the presidential election. But things are a little weird here. For example, hey, green probably is thinking, I can't possibly win the presidential election with $4 because everybody else has piles of money, food, whatever, that they can bid. The question is, of course, how much is it worth? It's a victory point. That's probably, you know, that's probably more than you can count on for what you get by distributing to the animals. So it's probably worth more than the 5 that you can put in one turn. Well, it's certainly more than the 5 you can put in one turn. But the points that you distribute among the animals, remember, that's going to be generally three different election cycles, parliamentary campaigns or whatever that happen. So you're probably spending $15 on a chance to get 1 or more points. In the current cycle, red is getting 2, assuming they don't screw blue over, which they probably will not. And assuming nothing happens that'll mess them up. But I think in general, you're not going to get this kind of jump in points. Of course, whoever's got lots of money and is kind of late in the order can probably squeeze themselves more points than other people. But anyway, certainly for people who have a fair amount of votes, they may want that presidential election to go in their direction, because that is an absolutely guaranteed point. And then also, somebody, not him, I thought somebody had the presidential election card. Yeah, he has it. So it may be worth a little bit more to him. Again, we're not very late in the game. If I spend this now, it may mean that I don't get it at some other point when I'd kind of want it. So I don't know. So anyway, that's my thinking there. I don't know quite what to do with the bids, you know. For example, for him, I'm pretty sure he's just going to bid 0 on his thinking. But for other people, what is the value? You know, it's probably somewhere, probably most of them are thinking along the lines of, well, gee, it's either high or nothing. Because if I can't get the presidency, I'm throwing away half the food that I bid. On that first turn, everybody's even, so it's easier. These are some of my bid decisions that I'm going to use. I may end up having to grab another die. But for him, on a 1, he'll bid something, just to keep people honest, really. Okay, so he's not going to bid, period. But then let's go for some of the other people. What I'm looking at here is he has 1, 2, so he's going to want to hold at least 10 more food, I think, right? Did I do things right? 1, 2, 3. So this is actually 15 food. So he's got 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wow. Now he may not want to participate or fully in parliamentary elections, because again, you're probably not going to get a lot in it. So I'm going to say for him, he's going to go kind of odd even whether or not he goes for the presidency, and he chooses not to as well. Over here, just thinking it's going to cost too much to win. And remember, the presidency gives you some extra pieces as well. It gives you an extra $1 around, so you get kind of $3, well, $2 off. So that's 15, 20. It looks to me like he's got a fair shot at it. So what am I going to do with that? Well, 15 is probably, well, he'd like to save 15. So if he goes odd, he's going to bid in the 5 range. If it goes even, I'm going to go into the higher ranges, and I'll split that up more. So he gets an even die. He wants to take a shot at it. How much bigger? I'm going to say 1, 2, 3 is going to put me in kind of the 10 range. I'm not sure exactly where. And 4 or 5 higher than 10. And 6, he might go all the way. Okay, so he's going to go in the 10 range. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, I think what I'm going to do is 1, 2, 3, I'll subtract off 10. And 4, 5, 6, 4, I'll make the 0 point. Okay, so he takes 2 off 10. So he's going to put a bid of 8. And this is just to give you an idea of how I kind of do this randomization. Nobody else knows what he's bid, so I'm not going to use his thinking, you know, as something to judge other people's thinking off of. You can see now, with all this money, it's a lot less likely that we're going to see a tie. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that kind of randomization with other people. I'm not going to do it in front of you. There's no point for that. So things kind of, I don't remember if he got 8. I think he put 7 in. He put 9 in. So blue is going to win this and get the presidency. Hey, he particularly wanted it, and I forgot that. Which means the other players each spend half, and they probably should have gone even. 3, 4, 5, 7. So he's got to give up 4 to get nothing. And he also gives up 4 to get nothing, but he gets nothing a little further ahead. So that's our presidential election. Let's check what we get. I know we get a point here. The marker shoots out with the next parliamentary. And the newly chosen president gets his agenda, which puts him in the lead. Of course, red might say, screw you. Again, I don't like doing that, in part because there's 2 choices I have in something like that. You know, I have an enmity which means you'll be afraid to deal. One person's afraid to deal with the other one maybe because you already know they're a liar, and everybody's kind of afraid because this was announced. This isn't some kind of secret deal or something. And then also, there's the simple. What comes of that is, well, how big a deal is that going to be? And I have to play around with dice for that decision. And then also, I have to keep track of that enmity and whether or not, you know, it requires me to keep track of more sort of metadata about the game that I'd rather not do. So at this point in the game, I'm probably going to just give him his point, even though he's in the lead. I don't know. Now, once he plays this, I might screw him over if that was an opportunity. So that puts us to the parliamentary campaigns, and we have to start with red over here. Put their 5 down. Parliamentary election. What have we done? Let's take a look at some of the colors. So red played in the hippos and the zebra. Two things they're interested in. The hippos because, hey, if somebody kind of beats them out in it, they can, and they'll probably beat them by 1. They'll have 4 in here. Well, we'll be swapping positions with them. So that's kind of a nice option. No reason to use that now. And the zebras, we might be able to get an extra vote. That might be really important. Usually doesn't seem to be too terribly valuable though. And in part of the reason it might not be valuable is it's not absolutely clear that you can make a deal with someone, because you may not be sure what the voting number, you know, the numbers come out, but you don't have a chance to really discuss at that point. Black already had a couple in the elephant. You can see orange went in there. Black put into the polar bears where they have potential for an extra vote if they want it. Who else? Threw down. Green did not play any pieces. Orange did, and blue did, even though they have less pieces than maybe they need. And one reason for that is the longer you hold off on things, the better chance you have of seeing what kind of, what the vote's going to shake out as. The danger to that, of course, is if somebody plays one of these, hey, let's have an early election. I don't think the early parliamentary election is out. Of course, when this runs out, it'll be redealt, but those pretty much come to you only at the end of parliamentary elections, same as food. So, you know, there's a lot of room to kind of think about what you have coming ahead to you. There will not be a formation of government here. There's potential for a vote of no confidence. How does gold feel about this? Well, obviously blue is going to continue supporting red, so this isn't the turn to do that. Maybe next turn when red has things we can, you know, get something, but I doubt it because only one person is going to get a bonus out of that, which means we go to the events. And I think we wanted to play the event card before we see what happens. We get a victory point for the rhino. That is blue again. So blue is chugging their way up, and they're kind of like, I don't know about the presidency. Of course, this would have to be played now before the political levels are done, which would force a new political election. Who would win that? I don't know. Gold's got a fair number of pieces left. I don't know. There wasn't something that said that things were open or closed in terms of whether or not you can see what other people have. But it is trackable information. So making it hidden, I don't see a huge point to that particularly. Although certainly, as long as, if it stated that it should be hidden, I'd have no problem with that. I have no problem with hidden trackable information. I know a lot of people really do. But my point with that is, hey, here's the thing. You're not allowed a pencil and paper. You're not allowed, any kind of thing to act as a mnemonic device. So if your memory helps you, that's great. It's not a particularly, having a good memory is not a particularly more unreasonable thing than, being able to think up good strategies or count in your head or something like that. It's just one of these facets of people, and I don't see any reason to strip that advantage away where it applies. But I'm going to treat it as, at least the stuff has to be visible, but maybe not trackable or whatever, and I can kind of see that I'm towards the lead there, which means I may well be playing this. At the very least, I'll drain money out of other people. Okay. What was I doing? Yeah, we're looking for cards that people would want to do the event for. Black could steal some votes. They don't see a point to that. Likewise with green, they could steal some votes. This isn't the time. The problem is, the time to do it is when you want to trigger a vote of no confidence. And, maybe, but votes of no confidence don't seem very valuable. Because this happens in the event phase too late to affect the parliamentary, formation of government and stuff like that. Pretty useless card. Hey, do I own the elephants? I do. I'm going to cash this in for a piece of money. And I don't feel like the cards are equally useful. There are cards that are just better than others. This is not time for any of those. Okay, so I think that's all the event phase stuff. We are going to be moving a presidential election up. And that's one of these. That means this moves up to here. And then we go to the political goal phase. And like I said, red. Red's getting a little worried about how far ahead blue is. They might be willing to give, oh geez. I hope I didn't take that from his money. Who else has food out there? Yeah. I probably took money to do this. Red does feel a little worried about how blue is. Odd, he'll adhere to the alliance. Even, he doesn't really want to adhere to it. Now, here's the question. If I grab this now, I am going to have a hard time convincing anybody of anything good. However, if I give it to black or orange, who aren't necessarily doing all that well, I maybe make a friend. So what I'm gonna, what I'm gonna do, because I'm afraid of things, is I'm going to score this one, and I am going to piss blue off. There's no question of that. And I have to write this down. And I'm saying I may not take this one. I may give that one away, because I don't want to jump to too big a lead. I don't want to anger people with how I did it, and stuff like that. Blue is definitely going to play this and get themselves yet another victory point. And everybody's kind of like, oh, you did the right thing, man. Sort of. But I'm going to put a marker of some sort on that to remind me that he's planning on possibly giving that away, just to maintain some level of comity between him and the other players. I mean, he made a deal with blue and said, I'll take 2 of these, and now he's not even following through on that. So, yeah. Oh, and that puts us to the end of the round, in which case this pushes forward. And there we are. Okay, so I've got this little red cube here. I don't know if I mentioned it. That's what I'm using to mark that enmity factor. And now if red just takes the next thing, that may cause an enmity with everyone. Just because they clearly screwed him over. But if they give it to one of the people who doesn't have any victory points, maybe that'll be a fairer option. Right now we're talking about a new presidential election though, because someone zipped the last one forward. And this is getting problematic because at this point, people have already distributed some of their points. They're in the running, and maybe they want to make sure they win some seats. But of course, the presidential election's worth more, so it becomes kind of tricky. The amount of points that everybody has, well, there's no longer, I guess, that huge disparity for various reasons. So I mean, like, blue didn't play in the parliamentary. And I'm not quite, because they got 2 more turns of it. So they may play for the presidential again. Other people, though, are sitting here with tokens out there that they've already expended, that they feel like, is it worth spending more tokens for the presidential? And it's almost like a 50-50 chance whether you want to even compete in the presidential. And there's the question of how high do you want to go? The last time we were looking at 9 took it. Well, you're probably not going to get more than 2 votes, out of any given parliamentary cycle. Of course, the advantage to the parliamentary cycle is you get cash out of that. You don't get shit out of being president, except for a victory point. So there's some reasoning to kind of avoid, to not completely avoid the parliamentary elections. Where's that cash coming from? Well, supposedly it's donations, but, it's like you give food out and you give food back. What's going on here? I don't know. Again, there's things in the model that don't make a lot of sense to me. I think a deeper model would make more sense, because it's not like the animals are actually capable of producing food. Not in a zoo, right? I don't know. And it's not like Animal Farm, man. Only 3 people decided to put bids in. 7 points for red, and they're going to get the presidency, and 2 points for both gold and black, and they're just wasting their money. Why? Well, not to let somebody just sleaze it for cheap. That hands the presidency over here, along with the prime minister. Hey, hey. And the election marker pushes forward, and he gets to implement a goal, which puts him a little ahead, becoming less and less sustainable to be able to fire that off on his own. Maybe he shouldn't have been so much, but Okay. That's going to put us on the parliamentary campaign, and he's still got the most seats. So, assuming that I check all these cards, make sure nobody's got a card that would affect what's going on. Okay, and then wheat. I can do an exchange on his turn, an exchange on his turn. Okay. And we placed some additional pieces here during the parliamentary campaign. And now I have to check again, do I want to do any of these? Well, no, because these, you want to do the turn of election, and I don't think there are any other with a little wheat marker. Same kind. What have we seen done? Done. Red. Red sleazed into there. I think they played here. Into the zebra. And there's a certain level of, decision making in this that's kind of hard to reflect back on, because there's no real story behind it. It's just slapping pieces down, really. It is very Euro-ish in that sense. And I gotta say, some other games like Coin and stuff, sometimes it's hard to see the story for that, even though it actually there is plenty going on that's easily tied. Gold put in here going for the hippos. Why? Well, they get a potential bonus for that. If they collect all their things, they get 3 extra seats. Those extra seats are an extra food as well, so maybe holding on to them isn't as valuable as I've been thinking, but I kind of don't like to use up votes when they're not clear that they're going to help me. So I've been withholding playing those. We had something that was kind of interesting that happened, and I'm trying to think what it was. In terms of somebody kind of withholding playing something for some reason or another, which I could have explained at the moment, but now that I've placed them, it has kind of filtered away from my brain. And I really can't tell you. Oh, I know what it was. Black had enough pieces. They could have gone in on zebra, I think, or something. I don't know. They could have gone in somewhere, but the problem was, no, not zebra. They might have gone in on elephant to go bigger because they already have some points in elephant. But they're like, well, orange is always going to go after me. I probably can't win that fight as long as the seating arrangement is in this order. Now, this might be a case where I want to swap and give to someone else, but I don't think that card can be used that way. Party gets the indicated, any party of your choice loses that number of seats. So I would just, I couldn't improve my turn order by misplaying this card in the wrong direction, which would be kind of an appealing thing to do, to tell you the truth. Because I think turn order is more important than a seat at this point in the game. So now where the hell are we? Well, we're at a potential vote of no confidence. I might be able to trigger one. What would I get out of it? Well, the big thing that I'd get is probably blue would vote with me, and I'm gold, so I'd be at 17 already. If I could find 6 more votes, I could form a coalition. But that's going to be tough to find. Nobody's got 6. So like black and orange are the 2 people who have no victory points yet. One might be tempted to say, hey, I'll give it to one of the 2 of you if you vote for me. But you can't do that. You have to make the whole proposal. You can't leave it up to chance. You could actually say, look, if the 2 of you agree, I'm pretty sure blue will take this option away from red. We'll give this to one of you. But I have to declare which one beforehand. So let's see if they're willing to go with that, because I think that sounds like a reasonable argument. And they are, and blue is willing to shaft red in that way and ensure that red does not get the option to steal this extra thing. So we're going to throw a vote of no confidence at this point, and that happens at this, and I don't think there are any cards which affect that. So we're going to flip this over, and we are going to propose a new government in which blue's like, I'll only support it if you leave the positions with me. In which we strip the prime minister, and we're going to give it to either black or orange. And we'll make a quick test for whether or not this works. Okay, it's going to go to orange. Now is black going to go ahead with this? If they don't, they're going to piss orange off. Yeah, they're going to go ahead with it. So orange will get the prime minister here. Yeah, orange could have prevented a vote of no confidence. And that creates a new government. Which people, and orange is going to get the right to make this. Red is not terribly pissed at gold for doing this. so I'm not going to give a cube for that. And I don't think there's anything too exciting anywhere. Blue would only support this if he got to keep his positions, because he's not really gaining anything out of it, which means I don't know what, not much. So now we go to the event. And the event this round is the president gets a victory point. Great. Okay. And what's next? Next is implementing the political goal. I get to play event cards. So now I hunt down the event cards, switch seats now. And I do this again by looking at the stupid little icons, and I really hate having to think this way. It just doesn't work for me. Do I have a cup? What does a cup mean? Cup probably means the most. Yeah. So I have the most snakes. I'm going to just turn this in now. It's not going to get any better for me, right? I do have the most snakes. No, I don't have the most snakes. So sorry. So yeah, I didn't have many pieces. Okay, so I think that's all of those type of places. And now we get to implement the political goal. And gold was willing to implement their own goal. Nobody's going to object to that. And so, or I'm sorry, orange. So they move in, leaving only black at the end. And now we're at end of round, and I don't remember what happens there. Probably nothing. We'll have a parliamentary election, and that is it. We're in the parliamentary campaign, and I'm feeling a little bit of pain here. First of all, red has to go first, so they can't play this to get themselves anything. And so they play for control, but they're probably only going to get 2 points there. Basically, wherever they play, they're probably getting screwed. Blue is in second here. They got $4. They're in the lead there. They might hold on to that. But what else could they do? If they slip into one of these places, they're going to get it trumped over. It's very painful to play once there are things down already. Maybe there's some better opportunity for orange, but I'm not really seeing it. That's probably the best place they can be, so I just can't afford to throw my pieces into there unless somebody's going to coordinate with them. And with me, one of the leading players, I think it's best that I hold my money, which is kind of sad. It's like I can't compete because of my seating order here and my low amount of money that I've had over the entire time. Could I throw more cash in? Well, I might end up losing this, but I'll probably come in second there. Here, I think I threw a buck in there, but I'm probably going to lose that as well. I just don't know, what to do. So that's kind of, geez, I shouldn't have done blue yet. Fuck me. I should actually be on gold. Hard for me to discern these things. But I'm just trying to show you some of the thinking and some of the paralysis that's coming about as things start developing and you realize, I got no chance of taking some of these places. Card was played, green played their Penguins card. They actually have a couple of different Penguins cards to get control and get the big 5-point gain there. And, you can see the people who go early, they just get screwed. And there's not much you can do about it. And if you're behind the 8 ball in terms of not having much cash in pocket and you won the last election, but somehow you lost all your money, how do you do that? Was this, I don't know. Must have been, I mean, he didn't win the last election, but he got a fair amount of seats, but he spent so much money on that and maybe on a presidential election that he won that he got hurt. So now we're actually at the parliamentary election, and I have to look to see, we have some people who have some advantages there, which we'll consider as soon as that's done. But what I have to do is I have to remove all these seats in the majority marker and figure out what we've got. So here, the elephants is going to be on orange at 4 and black at 1. And I don't think there's anything that gives you any extra power at this point. So you can't like swap at the end, which is what I kind of was hoping to do. So like red, if they could have swapped a gold for a red after all the plays, then it makes more sense that they played in here. But as it was, I knew they're going to get trumped over. It's a 4-point swing. They can't win as long as they are the majority party. But it means they probably, as majority party, they probably should have just been ignoring places where they can't, that are valuable. They should have been going for places like this where they might sleaze a vote or something. Of course, now they're going to be tapped out of money with very few votes. I'll get the rest of them and come back in a moment. Now here we are in the parliamentary election. This is the result as it came out with a high vote points of 13. We're not going to see the kind of thing that we were looking at before. The majority is 25. That means no two people actually have the majority yet. That puts an interesting position on black and gold. Gold has a lot of these conversions. I'm going to see who does theirs first. Black also has some. So gold is going to go with the first one, and they have hippos, which is a hard one to get, monkeys, and birdies. So I'm going to play the hippos one and give myself an extra vote. And that puts us up to 25, and 16 is 41, 49, which stays here at 25. So now we have 25 between us. And that's going to put it on other people. Hey, maybe we don't want two people controlling the vote. Of course, with two people controlling the vote, you end up with this kind of unbalance that we saw with red and blue, where, geez, where do we put the extra person in the deal? You know, where do we put that extra victory point from the deal? Because the parliament runs for 3 turns normally. Red has zebras. They'd be an option. One thing that can happen in circumstances like this is people have cards that help them, but they don't really want to play them. So that's one interest. Let's see if red wants to play its, or if orange is willing to play its. Neither one's willing to play, which means this is going to stick. And sometimes what happens in a real situation is somebody waits until they see that nobody's going to play, and then they finally pull it out. My buddy Tom and I, when we used to play, we used to both be sitting there and expect the other guy to be holding off as well. So we'd have to have time limits on some of these decisions. And I knew I could always count on him to chicken out if we got close to the time limit. So I just, would assume he had it. So that we can assume something like that happened there. So yeah, we have a potential government in play here. Now, but there are other cards that people can play at this moment, right? There's ones that give them food. Like this. Penguins. I have penguins. I want my 2 food. Fuck. And I'll get 2. Because I'm not going to get it otherwise. And is that right? No, that's not right. That's not how it works. This is, I get to keep 2 food there due to loyalty when we sweep everything. So yeah, that's kind of the next thing that happens. So before we go to forming government, we have to clear the things, and I have to find the whole sequence, because the parliamentary has, the sequence of play does not cover all of the steps very well. So like parliamentary election, wow, there's a lot going in here. And right now we're on the food token removal, which I'm going to have to do color by color and see if anybody has anything that can hold their tokens. People did not get a lot of perturbance in terms of gaining or losing tokens. You can see red lost a couple over what they had placed. Gold actually gained some. Green, I think, actually gained some. They only had 4 on the board. Now they've still got 2 on the board and a pile of cash just because of, being able to place late in the game, etc. Of course, the ordering's different. which means the blue and red will probably be able to make gains next time, but they don't have a lot of money, so those gains may not be very big. If you get yourself in a situation where you don't have a lot of tokens left, you may have trouble rebuilding. Of course, you may be able to be clever enough and only use the tokens that you need and get the greatest gain that in 2 more cycles, you can make up that ground. Okay, formation of the government. Well, gold and black can form a government. There's no question of that. The only question is, what about positions and such now? And what gold is willing to do is to say they will work with black and but take all the offices and give black the last 2 votes. Is black willing to do that? It doesn't sound like a terrible option, but on the other hand, yeah, they're willing to go with it. Okay, so gold is allowed to take, we'll get rid of this, and the vote is going to pass all 3 cabinet level positions. They're part of the government. Black is part of the government. We're going to mark this down this way, where gold gets the first one and black gets the next 2. This is a position where you could get really screwed with. And people who are not involved in this government, who's the biggest vote getter of them? Well, that's either going to be green or orange. And for those, we have to see you can propose anyone, right? You can take all the ministers, I assume. I gotta find the position of the opposition leader. Party in the opposition takes the corresponding card. In case of a tie, the party with the least number of implemented goals. Okay, so we're looking at orange and green. Yeah, great. In case of another tie, it's randomly determined. So we'll just, and it'll be orange who gets to be the opposition leader. Okay. And at this point, we're going to be getting some cards. We've already dealt out the cash. That happened before. It's going to be, the 2 party people get 1 card each. Everybody else gets 2. Anything happens when you implement. So we're on the event. And the event is, I think that means there will not be one of these. Government program. Strike. So there will be no political goal played this time. Is that what he does? Oh, he can be such a dick. He's got that power right now. But he doesn't have to play it this turn. Okay, what's going to happen is gold is going to screw black out of one of their 2. This is not, black could conceivably have an objection to this. Oh, I'm supposed to get the next 2. It's fair, but you know what? We got screwed by a card. I think it's understandable that I reposition what the bidding is. They might be upset. We'll give them a die rollable 1. They don't get it. But it is something that in a real game, if you got screwed over by a couple of these things by the same player, you would start to say, you know what, you screwed me over last time. Maybe I should get the bonus this time out of it. But whatever. And now we're on the events phase, and we look for some of these. Being able to swap seats for an event, not terribly useful. Unless you're looking at becoming part of the opposition. Am I in the lead in bears? No. Am I in the lead in elephants? No. I mean, chances are nobody is in the lead in any of these, but it could be the case that there was a leftover. Him being able to swap seats, what would this do? It would make the possibility of a vote of no confidence. If I stole 2 seats from black, that would put me in a position where I could create a coalition with gold myself. This might be the time to do that. Are these in order? Damned if I know. Again, some things are done in order, some things it doesn't say. It doesn't say. Let's see if he's got any interest too. So, these are not events. And this I can't read. Okay. So yeah, this is the only thing that might get done. Does he want to do this? He doesn't really have an opportunity to talk about it. And without orange being involved, he's probably not going to get pulled into the deal. I don't think this is a worthwhile thing. If I was the opposition leader, I would go for it or would think about it more. But right now, I don't think I can trigger anything of interest. Sounds fair. And I would love to be able to get the prime ministry because then I could get a vote. So I don't think we're going to reach the victory conditions until the end of game card comes out. We'll see. But I think like in the coin games and like in some other games that have multiplayer, dynamics with a lot of capacity to schwack other people, I don't think that it's easy to run away with the game in this. I think it's very easy to keep it close enough that whoever stockpiles the best hand for the end is the one who's going to win. Yeah, that's not exactly. We move this forward 1, 2, 3. Now, I think it's possible that I don't think it's possible that we can go beyond 12, but I think it's possible some of these might get shot beyond, though it doesn't really matter. They'll just kind of fall off. That puts us to, we don't get to implement the political goal. Does that just remove that phase? That's the interesting question. The entire phase is skipped, so nobody can play cards during that phase either. So like if you had something like this, you couldn't fire it off, which means we're at the end of the round and we'll be going to a presidential election. And we can see there's probably enough time for at least one more parliamentary election. Maybe we want to, what's his shit? Oh, he too could prevent it if he had the president. Interesting. Maybe we want to be able, to save money to make it to that next parliamentary election because there may be more goals coming up. These guys are kind of in the back. They're not going to make, they're not going to be boosting up. So people like red and blue, they are in the running right now. If they get another space due to presidential, that might more or less guarantee them the win. But on the other hand, if they spend all their pieces on that, they're not going to get anything off the parliamentary. And if there's 2 more parliamentary elections, that could be really bad. They could put themselves in a horrible state. I guess it's time to put this one up. And did we move this? I guess we did. All right. So yeah, we'll send this up.